Thank you for tuning in to The Reading, produced by Black Spectrum Network. Please go to www.blackspectrumnetwork.com to purchase a private psychic reading. If you can't get enough of my content, go to patreon.com/Black Spectrum Network. For as little as $2 a month, you can get these and other videos at least 1 week ahead of their YouTube release date. Please like this video, click the subscribe button, and leave us some feedback in the comment section. I'm going to shuffle the cards about MKUltra. Okay, so my first question about MKUltra is I want to know why did they choose to use drugs specifically to mind control people? What was the scientific purpose of using drugs? What were they trying to figure out? Okay. So one of the reasons that they were so what I'm saying is specifically they were using drugs on women to figure out how to make them to figure out how to control their sex drive and their sexuality. They were specifically wanting to figure out the female orgasm and the female body. It was something about them studying a woman's reproductive system and her sexual appetite, her sex drive, and putting a woman on drugs to figure out how to turn her into essentially kind of like a sex robot. I get the Ace of Swords, the Queen of Wands, the Art card. This is specifically about getting women to reveal. It is also about them experimenting. Okay, so one thing that I'm saying is that they would put women on. They would in these experiments, for example, and this is how I'm saying it. A woman would be on drugs, and they would get her to. They would do. They may penetrate her in different ways, and then they would get her to retell her story and see if she could retell it in an honest way, and under what circumstances could she recall the sexual violence and torture that she had experienced. Those experiments stopped because those experiments, and I'm just okay. So there's a lot. Okay, so I'm picking up on. I'm gonna say this. This is what I can see. I'm picking up on. Like the spirits are picking and choosing things that they want to say about this. It's like they're picking different experiments, and I think they're picking the ones that are going to be the most provocative and that need to be dissected by you all. So in this particular experiment, this one didn't last too long. I get that it lasted maybe like a year or two, and then they stopped it because it was almost as though they were just doing it for their own pleasure. This is one where it was like more just sadistic. It didn't have any intellect for them. It didn't have really any intellectual value to it other than trying to figure out how to get someone to be a sex slave and then for them not to remember being raped or not being able to correctly, like how well can someone correctly recall their sexual abuse under these drugs. Okay, so another card, so another thing was, this is all about them completing experiments on women and the female body, trying to understand how much stress could a woman take sexually, and how and what would the psychological stress do to her. Would she be a sex fiend? How would she respond to sex? Will she be animalistic about it? And can you reprogram her understandings of sex and make it so that her sexual appetite is her appetite? And that was a part of the study for them using these drugs. So that was a lot. I don't know what I just said right now. I don't know what I just said. Okay. All right. I didn't really read up on MK Ultra like that, so I don't really know too much. Other than I just, I'm sitting down, fresh mind. So this isn't like my Black History readings, y'all. Okay, so another thing is, okay, so now the spirits are taking a course of direction, a different course of direction in the conversation. They were trying to get men to hallucinate about living lavish lifestyles. In particular, it was about about putting them in dreamlike states where it's about trying to put them in these putting men in dreamlike states. Can they, what is a man's fantasy? Can he live that fantasy out in his dreams, and what does that do to what is he experiencing? And it's almost like they were there. It was almost like these were essentially like sex studies. That's what I'm saying. Is like a large part of this with the drugs is about sex and being and watching different scenarios in which people would undergo sexual trauma. How do they respond? How do sexually traumatized people respond to pleasureful sex, especially when it's appeasing a man's fantasy, such as like a woman has been so sexually traumatized that she feels like she feels like it's necessary for her to give herself in that way to a man, and then for a man that is not is I don't know. It's really about like the reproduction of trauma, and then some of these women had kids. All right. Welcome to Halloween, y'all. And I hope y'all enjoying these Halloween readings. Let me know in the comments if you're enjoying the Halloween reading. I said I was going to take a different turn. All right, so more about MK Ultra. Why did the Church Committee and the Rockefeller Commission blow the whistle on this project? Why did they decide to end it? Their financial relationship with the CIA ended. Whoever was the director of the CIA cut off his relationship with them. He didn't need he didn't need their money anymore. He didn't need their money to finance the experiments anymore. It's like everything had been completed, and then the Rockefeller Foundation's kind of like, bitch, no. Yeah, so the Rockefeller Foundation, like the thing is that the Rockefeller Foundation had the CIA, by its neck. It's like the CIA was under the leadership of the Church Committee and the Rockefeller Foundation, and that's the thing. And so it's like once the CIA, it's like. Why I think his name is Richard Helms. I'm probably getting this incorrect, but that's what I'm receiving from what I looked at last night. Richard Helms. Anyway, so I think his name is Richard Helms, but I'm saying that he had cut ties with them. He was like, the project is going to go on. We found different donors. These were international donors who had money as well. And they didn't want to deal with them anymore. I think that the Rockefeller Foundation was trying to make this an actual scientific project in terms of, acquiring actual data about this, but the CIA was definitely more so interested in entertainment and turning this in like capitalizing off of capitalizing off of this information, like making money off of it. In the American economy, but it's like using, so the way that I'm saying is that the CIA wanted to use this information for their own entertainment, their own pleasure, to teach and torture other people in other nations, and threaten them with what they had discovered. But the Rockefeller Foundation had their own agenda behind this, where they wanted to use it for scientific studies. And it's like they needed esoteric information for whatever reason. I need to reshuffle because I'm like halfway through the deck. So yeah, I'm gonna continue on this question. Give me just 1 second. Okay, so the Rockefeller Foundation blowing the whistle on this project. Well, Spirit doesn't. I kind of knew that this was gonna happen when I was shuffling these cards. So I was like, I bet the period is gonna come out. Basically, that was it. It's pretty much like, okay, so the Rockefeller Foundation and the church committee were using this for esoteric science, for the esoteric sciences, and to they were using it for the esoteric sciences. It's pretty much like once the CIA stopped accepting their donations and they were like, we don't want to work with you. The Rockefeller Foundation was like, no, we control this project. I don't think you know who we are. I think the CIA underestimated the power of the church committee and the Rockefeller Commission, not the Rockefeller Foundation. They may be connected, whatever. All right, so yeah, I guess I got to get into the next question. Okay, so the next question is, have they truly abandoned these experiments? Have they really abandoned these experiments? The spirits are pretty much saying that no, these experiments are just, they're being disguised. Because the oppression card is here. So it's like there are still test subjects that they have, but these test subjects I'm getting are not always they're definitely not US citizens all the time. I get that these test subjects are from indigenous countries. I am also getting that there's a financial component to having these test subjects. Like people sign off on research studies and they are not aware that they're a part of a new or a remixed version of the MKUltra study. But these people are paid large sums of money and they're approached in private. The test subjects are approached in private. They're paid large sums of money. They're like, it's almost like they apply to a Craigslist job that's like, hey, you can make this much money. And then people end up going to an office building, and what they find out is that they're talking to, this government operative that's not really a government operative. They sign away their rights and then they start doing these research studies and, the next thing you know, you're there. So, when I say you're there, I mean the next thing that after 2-3 studies, it's much more discreet now. You won't really realize that you're under the study until you're actually in, until you're actually getting tortured. And I think tortured or touched, let's put it that way, scientifically touched, medically touched, surgically touched, sexually touched, all those touchings. But you may not even be aware at the time that it's happening to you. You may not even be conscious, or you may be conscious that it's happening and you can't speak about it. But nobody knows where you are, but you also, again, I'm saying, Anyway, the next few cards are just basically saying, that there are a lot of women behind these projects. There's a woman politician that's involved in these as well. The Queen of Distance coming up. I don't know who she is, but it's a woman politician who's still conducting these studies. And these women What are these women wanting? Clarify. These women want more. So, you know, this is funny because it's like there's within these studies, or the people that's conducting them, there's a more feminist push. Like these women want more power. Like women want to introduce more women into this industry. So yeah, the studies haven't been abandoned. What's funny is that what we're saying in society is like where we're seeing like women want women. You know, we've been seeing this period. You know, over centuries that women have been pushing for, you know, equality and equity. But I'm saying even within this particular industry, women are pushing for equality and equity, particularly the women researchers. So I guess that's a little bit of tea. Again, this reading is kind of everywhere. So, but I still feel like it's hella interesting from just the information I'm getting. Now I want to know, were the Ultra documents really destroyed? Were they really destroyed? Were they really? No, they're still. You can pay to get them. You can pay to get these documents. It's a lot of money, and you'll be paying about $1 billion. But you can pay to get these documents. You can pay to get these documents. Yes, you can. But you're gonna pay in the billions for them, and they're gonna be redacted. They still exist, but they're only given to certain. They're only given to people that are in the esoteric sciences. And because the magician card came out, and I get this $1 billion threshold because the dominations, especially because there's domination cards coming out in the abundance card. I get this $1 billion threshold where it's like these people have the ability to. I get this energy that these are the people that have the ability to change the stock market. You know, you pay for the documents, you want to know what people can do, and then it's almost like a membership. It's almost like a membership. It's like, hey, you can pay $1 billion for these documents, but then also if you want if you want a sample of this particular drug, if you want to participate in it, it's like you can pay. It's levels to it. You know, you can pay to participate in the experiments as far as being not as far as being a research subject, but you can participate in the experiments. You can pay to participate. Yeah. So now I'm saying where I'm saying yeah, only these documents, it's like there are only few copies of them. You know, it's like they weren't destroyed, they were kept, but they were hidden. Like they're hidden. You know, it's like they're hidden, and they're hard copy, few digital copies. Hard copies, very few digital copies, and they are stored in a base. Okay, so my vision, I see a lot of sand, like a desert, and I see a base. I see but it's not domestic. It's in North America, but it's not domestic. And not on the coast, not on this particular coast. It is guarded. It is in a safe. Something laminated. Yeah, these documents are still they still exist. They definitely still exist. Okay, why did Frank Olson die? the real reason that Frank Olson died. You know, his ancestors felt like it was time for him to go because he was about to interrupt something involving the universe. It's like he was about to exploit information that was going to interrupt a course of events in the universe, things that actually needed to go about happening that he didn't immediately understand. He tried to leave amicably. Like he didn't want to leave. He tried to get out of this particular project, or he tried to get out of this particular project in an amicable way, kind of like let's just be cool. I'm a good guy. I'm not gonna say anything, sort of thing. And he felt like he got away, like he was okay. But it's like the only way out is through a box, sort of thing. And because it was like he would have eventually have said something, like if not a few days later or a week later after he had left the job, he would have said something years later. He was he died in a very creative way. They were creative in disguising his death. And they made it appear as though he had overly indulged, as though he had been overly indulging life. Like he already had a tendency to, like act erratically or out of control. Like his behavior was already out of control, and that wasn't really true. Gotta keep going. What did he know? So he died because like he was about to. So what did he know? He was okay. So he wasn't okay with the sexual torture. It started to get to a point where they asked him to participate in it. Like I think he was asked to do something and he was like, no, like I can't do it. He was supposed to do it. And I think that they, it was a test. It was kind of like, hey, you should go in and do it. And he said, no, I think I'm okay. But he didn't realize that they were testing him to do it. And I think that they were almost trying to peer pressure him into doing something sexual with one of the women. And there's something in, what's crazy. There's also something involving like Siamese twins or people who have multiple, or people that have two heads. And figuring out how they experience pleasure as well. And I feel like, it's like, it was all about like how much, like these studies were largely about how much information can the brain process and what can the brain remember? What can you do to the brain? And can you manipulate people's experiences with the brain? I mean, and these are things that you all can confirm. But really, this guy knew I'm telling you what he knew, and he was asked to participate in a sexual in a sexual experiment. I don't think he had a wife, but I get that. I get that he also wanted to have a normal family. He was starting to think about, what if this happened to his family, that he was trying to build. And, he also wanted to be married. And it was just kind of like, he wanted his life to take a change of direction. But he didn't know how deep the rabbit hole went. He took with him something. Like, it's like he had like photographs of things or something. It's like he had some information. Like he had his own photographs of, he had his own documents, his own photographs, his own evidence of these experiments happening. But he didn't think that they knew about it. But they had already, like, I get this vibe that they are all like, if he were in an apartment or a house, they had already been in his apartment and house, and they had already seen, that, okay, hey, he's got some, he's got these photographs, he has this on us, put it back. They already knew. So it wasn't that's another thing. So I'm going to reshuffle because I'm through most of the deck and continue going. Okay, now I want to know, what is the truth behind his death? What is the truth behind why he died? He was non-compliant. He was non-compliant, and I think that even his ancestors couldn't protect him from it. It was kind of like he knew his ancestors had been forewarning him of leaving the job too early, but they had also warned him of the dangers of getting involved as well before it had even happened. It's kind of like he had numerous opportunities to leave. So that wasn't his first rodeo. It's kind of like, I don't get that his ancestors were happy with his participation in the study. I don't get that his ancestors were ruthless like that. You know what I mean? I get more so like they were on some he's going to do this, really? Like, this is what you really want to do? Okay. If that's what you really want to do, cool. But they were also, they also didn't feel the need to intervene. They were like, it's better for him to die than for them to torture him. To be honest with you, like, death was the best thing that could have happened to him. But it was all about his stubbornness and not following the rules. He stayed alive for so long because he had been doing, he did what they said. You know what I'm saying? But when he stopped doing what they said, they felt that he became a liability. And that's the most simple way that I can put it. Let's see. What else can we say? They had always kind of sort of felt like he was a weak link as well. And so they had already had plans to, destroy him. But they had to do so in a way that wasn't going to leave them culpable. And they are, obviously, but it's a situation of you got involved this deeply in these things, and you knew this much. Some of it you turned the other cheek to for profit, and you did some of these things in the name of science. So you didn't think that these people would turn their hand against you, but it had to happen. He had to be punished. Not punished, but he had to, justice had to be, justice is blind. Let's just put it that way. It's not like he was, it's not like he contributed financially to the project, It's not like he had a ton of money. He was just a scientist, even though he was established as far intellectually and he had degrees, he was just a scientist. He was not important to them, so they could let him go. And he could easily be replaced by another scientist that wanted to participate in a study like this for a lot of money. in the name of science. So why did they focus on LSD in particular? The chemical component is like the chemicals in LSD. It's like they were learning. It's like whoever was the there are scholars of there are like drug scholars. Like I'm saying like pharmaceutical drug scholars that they were working with. And I know that these studies happened at UCLA. Some of the studies happened at UCLA. Anyway, I'm saying that these pharmaceutical scholars were I'm saying that these pharmaceutical scholars were essentially responsible for these pharmaceutical scholars were essentially responsible for creating the LSD drug. They were trying to figure out how to lower people's tolerance to produce their own free will. And I see that this particular drug was the most potent, and it worked the quickest because of how it was that they produced it. And the LSD that they were using was not the LSD that the average person could use. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that what they use as LSD is not the LSD that is available to everyone else. Here on, if you were on the streets or you sold LSD. I'm also saying that they wanted to see the effects of LSD on pregnant women. Like once a woman that was traumatized, like what would a traumatized woman do once she was pregnant and she was on the drugs? And what would happen to the baby? How much can an infant take? Will the infant come out traumatized as well? Like how is this infant going to go about living life? This was a very sexual study. At the time. And I'm saying that LSD increased your libido. It heightened the libido to such a point that you would probably masturbate in front of someone. I want to now describe the hypnosis studies in detail. The hypnosis studies were about making people fall in love and testing love and like testing out how can love and affection, can you make somebody fall in love with you and then they're ready to have sex with you? Can homosexuality, bisexuality, testing it out with race. And age especially. How can you make someone that's very young fall in romantic love with you? When does romantic love start to develop? And I'm talking about like 6 and 7 year old children that they're testing these love hypnosis out on them. Also putting people through depression, like hypnotizing them and saying like, can you take them from lows to highs? Can you put them in a situation where you tell them, hey, you're happy, and then, hey, you're sad? And it's rapid. If I snap my fingers, are you happy? If I snap my fingers, are you sad? Really programming the mind of a person and turning them into kind of like how you would train a dog. If that makes any sense. So if I tell my dog to roll over and then I tell them to sit, they need to do it within 2 seconds. And they're trying to change people's emotional disposition in that same time span. The disappointment, but I'm picking this up from the arithmetic of the disappointment card and the Queen of Discs. So it's about I'm picking up that this was about emotions, particularly playing around with people with social bonds. How close can you bond with a child or your family? Or will you perceive this person to be a family member? Can you have sex with them? Even though y'all are not biologically family with one another, can we put you in an incestual relationship because you all have been psychologically traumatized enough to believe that you all are brother and sister? things like that. These hypnosis studies were were used to coerce people into like sexual slavery and getting them adjusted to it, like making them want it. That's the thing, is eventually, I see it as an advanced version of the type of sexual abuse that happens when a woman is kidnapped by a man and then she falls in love with her kidnapper. But I see them using drugs to enhance that, doing it on a grander scale because they have more money and a more advanced technological systems to recreate those traumatic experiences for people. The hypnosis studies were to get people to adjust to it, but there's also about hypnosis was also important for like exposing people to different images of abuse, normalizing abuse for them and saying how it was that it would reshape their opinions of abuse. In society, like, how do you feel about sexual abuse now versus, after 18 months in this study, how do you feel about sexual abuse, and seeing if, your experiences with it will change. Can you, will you be sadistic? Can you get this person to, it's all about how far can you take a sane person? How much can you break a sane person down and build them up to be sane in the way that you would define sanity? But it's all experimental. It wasn't for a particular purpose at that time. It was just to test the limits of the human psyche. And finally, these hypnosis studies were mainly used to create sex slaves, orgies, and they were putting these people through like party simulations, like, hey, dress up, we're going to dress these people up. You're going to a party and then, see if they'll all have an orgy upon command. It's weird. Okay. And my final questions. Did they experiment with people's spirituality in any way? They definitely crossed the line a lot of times. And what I see is that, playing around with people's consciousness, trying to figure out which areas of the brain you can manipulate to change people's consciousness, and what drugs influence those parts of the brain as well. So they were definitely overstepping some boundaries as far as, breaking people's free will. At the same time, there is this was all about understanding intuition too. People's how intuition could be affected by trauma, and what are like I said, testing people's boundaries. So like playing with people's spirituality, the piece, the victory card, the priestess, these cards are specifically telling me that there were some esoteric rituals that they put these people through but they were experimenting with these esoteric rituals to see what it would do for these people. Putting them through animal torture as well. Like having them to torture an animal. Can they survive eating a raw animal? I don't know why I just envisioned someone fighting a pig. Anyway, there was, as far as I can tell, with them playing around with people's spirituality, the final thing that I can say is they were trying to figure out one thing they wanted to know was, do the different sexes have different amounts of intuition? That being an important question. Do they have different types of intuition? Do they use their intuition differently? What parts of the brain, like when they are being intuitive, what parts of the brain are at work? And how can they improve? How can they create drugs that will improve people's use of their intuition, or hypnotizing them into shutting down certain parts of their thinking process, or cognitive, or different neural. A lot of these are like neurological studies. Let's just put it this way. These are neurological and behavioral studies. Okay, that's how I hear it. But they were trying to hypnotize these people into shutting down different parts of their brain so that they could figure out, how do I put this? Can you shut down, if you shut down the thinking portion of the brain, can people intuit much more quickly? Is one thing that I do see them trying to investigate. Okay, so you all know what that time is. I want to thank you for tuning into The Reading, produced by Black Spectrum Network. Please go to www.blackspectrumnetwork.com to purchase a private psychic reading. If you can't get enough of my content, go to patreon.com/Black Spectrum Network. For as little as $2 a month, you can get these and other videos at least 1 week ahead of their YouTube release date. Please like this video, click the subscribe button, and leave us some feedback in the comment section. Before I go, I'll leave you with this quote from Iyanla Vanzant. The answer always lives in the same room as the question. You are the answer. I'm your reader, Nick Zoe, and thank you for tuning into The Reading.
So fuel my fire, take me higher, I'll be your liar too. Cause when we're here, there's nothing better than the skyline.